Sorry, Barry. No, you're not.
I mean, I have a feeling that Mark might not be here because he couldn't take it. He just couldn't take it. Okay. It's really a wonderful pleasure having everybody here. And we are sponsored by Shalom Fogel and family, Li Nishmas Yaakov Zev ben Yodaya, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Tivya Miriam Bas Gad, Yosef ben Tzim ben Yaakov Zev, and for Shalema for Moshe Arya ben Miriam, and for great Shidduch for Chayat Tivya Bas Shoshana Gittel was sponsored by Baruch Ian, Li Nishmas Yaakov Chaim ben Abba, Esther Bas Yona, Avram ben Shmuel HaKayin, and for Shalema for Liba Bas Anya. We're sponsored by A.B. Spry. We're sponsored by Mark Frankel for loving memory of Yisrael Tzvi ben Chaim Yeshua Falek. We're sponsored for the physical, spiritual, and emotional protection of Yeshua Menachem Mendel ben Beila Shendel Rivka. And we're sponsored by Berish Gasserman for Shalema for Shoshana Bas Adina Chana.
Mordechai Tzvi ben Roshana.
Right, Mordechai Tzvi ben Roshana.
And Chaya Freda Bas Rachel Rivka.
Chaya Freda Bas Rachel Rivka. Okay. What happened to our new cover? Okay. So it says that if you shechted the paraduma chutz megita outside of its pit, so that doesn't constitute shchutei chutz. We're holding on Daf Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, and we're holding at the new Gemara 5 lines from the top. So the Gemara says, "My chutz megita." What does it mean outside of its pit? Amrei Shlokish chutz mimokom habodukla. That means outside of the area that was inspected to make sure that it was completely tar, that there was no kever hatahaim, there was no underground grave underneath it. So Rabbi Yochanan tells Reish Lakish, we don't need such an inspection. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan, v'alo kol Eretz Yisrael bedukihi. The whole land of Eretz Yisrael is considered not to have mason, because we'll see that Rabbi Yochanan holds that there were no mesei mabel in Eretz Yisrael. Ella Amar Rabbi Yochanan kigain, not mesei mabel, but that it didn't. There was no flood in Eretz Yisrael. Ella Amar Rabbi Yochanan, what it means is kigain sheshachta lifnim min chaymes Yerushalayim. It has to be slaughtered outside of Yerushalayim, and if you slaughtered it within Yerushalayim, you're not chayiv v'shchutei chutz. Says the Gemara, why do you have to say that he slaughtered it inside Yerushalayim? V'lukma k'gain sheshachta chutz l'chayma. He did it outside of the chayma, but although he did it outside of the chayma, but he did it shaloi keneged ha-pesach. It wasn't opposite the Pesach Hayel Mayit. The Amar Rabada Barava shachta shaloi keneged Pesach psula. If you shecht it not opposite the Pesach Hayel Mayit, it's pasul. Shenema v'shachat v'hiza. And we learn how to gzeh v'shava v'shachat v'hiza. Mahazah keneged ha-pesach. Just like the sprinkling has to be parallel to the Pesach Hayel Mayit, af shchitasa keneged ha-pesach. Maybe you'll say that we don't make such a juxtaposition between the shchita and hazah, but v'itmar we learn beferish sorfa shaloi keneged ha-pesach. If you burn it, but it's not opposite the oil mayit, Rabbi Yochanan Amar psula. Rabbi Yochanan says it's possible. Rabbi Aishia Amar kshay. Rabbi Yochanan Amar psula because he makes a hekish v'sara v'yiza. Just like the spraying of the blood has to be Pesach Al-Mayid, the spraying also has to be Pesach Al-Mayid. Rabbi Aishia Amar ksheira al pirsha yisreif. With its dung, you burn it, and the the drasha is Mokum Sheporesh Eslamisa, there where it separates for death, Sham Tehisrei Fasa. So we don't have, he doesn't learn this Hekesh. So anyway, though, why does Rabbi Yochanan have to say, if he shechted it in Yerushalayim, let him just say that when it says Chutz Megita, it means shechting it outside of Yerushalayim, but not Keneged HaPesach. So basically, the Gemara says they're both true. Imrei loy mibai kamar. It's building up to a climax. Loy mibai chutz l'b'chayma. It's not a question if you did it outside of the chayma, but not opposite the Pesach al-Mayed. The rechukei raka. That's far away. El afilu lifnim min hachayma. You do it within the chayma. So I might think that it's closer. The kruvei karva. It's closer to the mikdash. Ve'ema tiskasher. I might say that it's kasher kamash malan. So now, the Gemara says, let's talk about this, what Rabbi Yochanan says, that the whole Eretz Yisrael is considered beduka, that there's no dead. Says the Gemara, Amar is like Gufa. It's looking into something a little bit more deeply. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan, V'aloi kol Eretz Yisrael bedukahi. Says the Gemara, but my kamifli. What are Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan arguing about? Mar Savar, Reish Lakish holds Yored Mar Eretz Yisrael. The Mabel descended to Eretz Yisrael. Now, I want to get this clear. Everybody agrees that the people in Eretz Yisrael died. But if there was a Mabel, the Mabel would have caused it with its boiling water and everything to be embedded deep in the ground. So, Mar Savar Yored Mabel Eretz Yisrael. Reish Lakish says that the Mabel came down to Eretz Yisrael. Or Mar Savar Lo Yorad. It didn't come down. Amar Rav Yochanan, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, U'shnei Mikra Echad Darshan. And they both expound the same pasuk. Ben Adam, son of man, Amalah, At Eretz Lo Mitorahi. Are you not a pure land? Lo Gushma b'Yom Zoam. It didn't rain in the day of wrath. So that's one way to learn. That's the way Rabbi Yochanan learns. Right? Rabbi Yochanan learns the pasuk. At Eretz Lo Mitorahi. Are you not a land that's pure? It didn't rain in the time of wrath. Rabbi Yochanan savar itmuei mitamakra. The pasuk is saying it in the lashon of bewilderment, in amazement. Eretz Yisrael, miloi mitara. Aren't you pure? Klum yordu alecha gesham b'yom zam. Did it rain in the time of the Mabel? It didn't in Eretz Yisrael. According to Rabbi Yochanan, it didn't.
It didn't. Why? He asked it as a tema.
What?
He's asking a tema, meaning that it was.
No. He's saying the first part of the pasuk is a tema. The first part of the pasuk, Rabbi Yochanan holds it didn't rain. That's why Rabbi Yochanan holds it as a cheskes of Tara. So Rabbi Yochanan learns the pasuk as follows. Again, At Eretz Lo Mitorahi, aren't you pure pace? Because Lo Gushma b'Yom Zam, because it didn't rain at the time of anger. That's the way Rabbi Yochanan learns the pasuk. While Reish Lakish learns the pasuk kipshutai. Reish Lakish says, Reish Lakish of kapashte, Eretz Lo Mitorat. You're a land that's not pure. Because Milo Yardu Alecha Geshamim B'Yom Zam, didn't it rain in the time of anger? And therefore there are mason there, and therefore it's a land that can't be assumed to be tar.
Couldn't there be mason from another period?
That we don't have to be chayshish. We have to only chayshish for a kever tahaim if we have a reason to be chayshish. Now,
So what happened to those people? I mean, they died and they just laid on the ground.
they laid on the ground. So laid on the ground, later people went ahead and buried them. If it was with the rain and the heat, that embedded it in the ground. Says the Gemara, Eisvei Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish asks Rabbi Yochanan, you know that the paraduma was a very, very, very complex procedure. And it became complex because of the ugliness of the tzedokим. The tzedokim said that a tful yom was not allowed to do the paraduma. No, somebody that touched a sheretz and went to the mikveh was not allowed to do the paraduma until Erev Shemesh. That's not the halacha. The halacha is that a tful yom is allowed to do the paraduma. In order, which we do, it's the reason why we have chalent on Shabbos, in order lahotzi melibon shel tzdokim, we're metame the person that does the paraduma, and we toivel him, so that he should do it when he's a tful yom. But because we do a tumah like this, in all other areas we're very makpid. So therefore, when the water was drawn to mix the ash of the paraduma, they used children that were raised in chatzeros, in courtyards, that were built on rock, and underneath the rock they made a vault, an opening, so that in the event that there would be a kever tahaim, there would be a paisach tefach, there would be an opening of a tefach, so it wouldn't pass the rock. And they brought pregnant women there, and they raised the children there. Let's see it inside. The Gemara says, there were courtyards in Yerushalayim, benuyos ala sela, built on rock, v'tachtein cholol, and underneath it they had a hollow area, mipnei kever atayim, to ensure that if there is an underground grave, there would be a pesach tefach that it wouldn't be able to pass above the rock. Umeviim noshim, they brought women, mubaris, that are pregnant, v'yoldais, they gave birth, umegad l'sham b'neim, and they raised their children there, lapara. Umeviim shvarim, they brought oxen, v'al gabeim dalsais, and on top of the oxen they put boards, so that if there was a kever and the child leaned over, the board would block. V'tinoikis yashvin aleim, and these children that were under 9, so they couldn't have any tumah of zera, would sit on it. The kaisis shall even be yadon, rock kaisis, they can't be makabel tumah. Umalu v'yashvu, they would go and fill it up, because when they went into the water, we're not chayshish that there's a grave in the water. And v'yashvu b'mekayim, and they went back and they sat in their place. So you see that we're worried about tumah in Yerushalayim. We're worried about tumah in Eretz Yisrael. Says Gemara, Rav Huna Berei Rabbi Yeshua, Maila Asa b'Para. Now this was just, they went beyond because of the paraduma, like we said. Eisvei Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. So Rabbi Yochanan asked Reish Lakish, Pam echad motzu atzamas belishkas dir ha'etzim. They once found bones in the woodshed. And ubikshu ligzar tumal Yerushalayim. They said, oh, if there's bones here, then there must be dead elsewhere in Yerushalayim, and they wanted to be geyser a presumption of tumah throughout Yerushalayim. Amar Yeshua Ragla v'Amar loibushu kli mihilanu. Is it not a shame and a disgrace for us? Shenigzer tumah al iravayseinu. Should we decree a tumah on our ancestors? Aye meisei mabel, aye meisei Nebuchadnezzar. Where are the dead of the Mabel and the dead of Nebuchadnezzar, which are in Yerushalayim and elsewhere, but are not in Yerushalayim? So therefore, we shouldn't do it. Says Gemara Me'Dekamar Hachi, since he said this, Lav L'Meimer D'Lo Yahavu, doesn't that imply that it wasn't there? So that's a right to Rabbi Yochanan, that the Meisei Mabel, the waters of the Mabel didn't descend in Eretz Yisrael. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. And at the time of Nebuchadnezzar, the Yosefon says that in the first few days after the Churban, there were millions of Jews that were killed. So obviously they were Meisei Nebuchadnezzar. So, were there no Harugei Nebuchadnezzar? Rather, it means Elahavu Upaninu. It must be that earlier generations made sure to clear it. Hachanami Havu. It could be like Reish Lakish that there were Meisei Mabel, but Upaninu, they did inspections and they cleared it. Says the Gemara, wait a second. Now what's the problem? The Afnu, if they cleared it, then Ha'ifnu, then it was cleared. So then why did they need, Reish Lakish said that they needed to be bodak. They needed to check the area of the paraduma. But if they cleared it, then why did they have to check the area of the paraduma? Don't forget the paraduma was outside of Yerushalayim. It says the Gemara, the Ifnu Yerushalayim. They cleared it only from Yerushalayim. Mikule Eretz Yisrael Ifnu. But from the whole Eretz Yisrael they didn't clear it. And that's why they needed to check the area of the Gita that it shouldn't be any Mesim there. Ikad Amrei, others say that it's not Rabbi Yochanan that asked the kasha on Reish Lakish, it's the other way around. That Reish Lakish asked the kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. Ikad Amrei, Eisvei Reish Lakish to Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish asked the question to Rabbi Yochanan, Aye Meisei Mabel, where are the dead of the Mabel? Aye Meisei Nebuchadnezzar. So Reish Lakish says, well, obviously the Meisei Nebuchadnezzar were there. So that implies the Meisei Mabel were also there. My love, obviously they were dead of Nebuchadnezzar. Hani Namiav, they were also Meisei Mabel. Says, you want to know who says? Midei area, who says? How could he say? How could he say? There were Meisei Nebuchadnezzar that were cleared away, but there wasn't Meisei Mabel because the rain didn't come down in Eretz Yisrael. Eisvei, this is interesting. It says, Mikol asher becharava mesu. All that were on dry land died. So Rabbi Yochanan says, so 1 second. So Reish Lakish, this according to this way, Reish Lakish is asking the question. Bishleim l'didi damina yored mabel Eretz Yisrael, that it rained in Eretz Yisrael also. That's why everybody died. Mishum hachi mesim elodidach. But according to you, that it didn't rain in Eretz Yisrael, then the population in Eretz Yisrael shouldn't have died. The whole world shouldn't have died. Amai mesim. Says the Gemara, no, they died because of the heat. The whole world became a steam bath. You know, it says, Bereisen kilkulu, they sinned with hot semen, and therefore they were punished Bereisen. And the whole world became the opposite of the ice age. It became the heat age. Says the Gemara, they died mishum havla. Kid Rav Chisda, like Rav Chisda, the Amar Rav Chisda, Bereisen kilkulu, they sinned with hot passion, or Bereisen nidano, and therefore they were punished with the boiling liquid. Now we know this, the waters calmed down, and it says by Achashverosh, just like over there it was the hot anger of the king that calmed down, here also was the hot water. Ikidamre, others say the question is the opposite. even those that are on the dry land died. So he says that's good according to me, because Eretz Yisrael is dry. That means that even those that were on dry land in Eretz Yisrael died because of the heat. But according to you, my charava. So the Gemara says, like we learned the pasuk, charava sha'isem kara. Those that existed on dry land before the flood, they all dried. V'amai korile charava. Why was it called dry? Kid Rav Chisda. The Amar Rav Chisda, only those on the dry land. Fish didn't die. That's what Kol Asher B'Charava comes to exclude. It's Kid Rav Chisda, the Amar Rav Chisda, B'dar HaMabel Lo Nigzer Gzeir Al Dogim Shebiyam. During the generation of the flood, there was no decree on the fish. Shenema Mikol Asher B'Charava Meisu. Only those on the dry land, v'loy dogim shebiyam. The dogim shebiyam were not promiscuous, they were not licentious, and therefore they didn't die. They also weren't corrupt. Wow, look at this amazing crowd. A.B. Spry, Saba, Dr. Guy, Mel Zachter, Dr. Black, Yaakov Warman, Shalom Fogel, Baruch Ian, Ruvain Palak, Shimon Klein, Michael, what's his name? He hasn't been here for a while. Starts with an M. Marshall Castle, Yisrael Fisher, Barry Cement, Mo Kushner, Nachman Chapler, Shelley Zeitlin, Yitzi Fuchs, Moshe Lehman, Stephen Holtzman, Avram Rezepkowitz, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, Irving Fishbaum, Menachem Yemansky, Ilya Shutman, Yitzi Muller, Rebel Yayafi. I'm glad you're back from Connecticut. And David Helfgott. Here in Shul, we have Berish Gesseman, we have Gedalia Engel, Chaim Kramer, Michal Avram Chavin, Reb Katz, Danny Vogel, Ruvain Shannon. Again 9. What is it with us? What is it with us?
Typical show, always one short.
What is it with us? That elusive 10th person. It's 8? 8. Okay, that makes me feel less bad. That's bad.
Wasn't it brought down that only under the table was regular water?
Well, the question is, if it was boiling, why didn't the fish die? So the answer that they give is that lower down it wasn't hot.
That's why Oig held on to the table.
The Gemara is going to tell us that around Oig they cooled it down. Around Oig they cooled it down.
For the merit, for his merit?
Well, Og, it's a very big question why. Some say the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted the future generations to see a remnant of the Mabul and to know what existed before the Mabul, and even so they were destroyed, so that there should be an element of Yiras Hashem. That's one of the reasons. Others say that Og was saved because he was destined to bring news to help save Lot, which was Malchus Beis David, and that's why Og was saved. So now, the Gemara says, Bishloi melamandi amalo yored mabel Eretz Yisrael. There's a kasha. The Re'aim, which was a towering creature, survived the flood. But there was no room in the Teva for the Re'aim. So how did the Re'aim survive? So Bishloi melamandi amalo yored mabel Eretz Yisrael. Hainu dekam Re'aim hasam. The Re'aim was in Eretz Yisrael, and obviously it was strong enough to withstand the heat. El Lamandi Yama Yarad, then Reima Heicha come. How did the Re'aim survive? Reb Yanai Guria Sichnisa B'Teva. Noach brought in baby re'emim, a baby boy and a baby girl into the teva. Says the Gemara, I'm sorry, you completely underestimate a baby re'em. A baby re'em could not fit into the teva. I mean, the baby re'em wouldn't even fit in our shul. Says the Gemara, V'amar Rabba Babachan l'didi chazili or zila dereima bas yuma. I saw a young re'em 1 day old, v'have kahar tover, and it was as towering as Mount Tover. V'har tover kama have, and har tover was no, pipsqueak. Arba'am parseh. It was 40 parsais. That's 120 mil. Mishka de Tzavari, the length of its neck alone was Tlasa Parsei, was 3 parsais. Ma'bata the Reisha, the seat of its head, what it sat on, what the net sat on, was Parso Palga. Says the Gemara, it was a pars and a half. Rama Kava, when it defecated, when it excreted, its dung, Sachar Yardana, would stop up the Yarden.
Oh my gosh. What's this, a dinosaur? I mean, what
The re'em was a tremendous animal. I mean, it was. If you want to call it a dinosaur, you could call it a dinosaur, but it was a lot bigger than the dinosaurs, the Tyrannosaurus and the Stegosaurus that we know of. This was even a lot bigger than that. Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan says, "Roisha yechnisa l'teva." They put its head into the teva. Says the Gemara, "V'amar marvata the reisha parsa palga." Just the seat of its head was a parsa and a half. That's a lot bigger than the teva. El roish chaytma yechnisa l'teva. Its nose they stuck into the teva. Says the Gemara. V'amar Rabbi Yochanan lo yar mabel eretz. Says the Gemara. Why does Rabbi Yochanan give the answer that they put his nose in? He said the Mabel didn't come to Eretz Yisrael, so he could have just said it was in Eretz Yisrael. Ayvam Rabbi Yochanan lo yar Mabel Eretz Yisrael. Says the Gemara, l'divra Reish Lakish Kamer. He was answering for Reish Lakish. Says the Gemara, but how could you keep his nose there? For Kasagya Teva, for a year the Teva was moving up and down, and the nose is not going to stay there. Amrei Shlakish Karnav Kashru Teva. They tied its horns to the Teva. Says Gemara, Amrav Chista Anshe Dara Mabel Beroischen Kilkulu. They sinned in heat, Uberoischen Nidainu, and they were punished in heat. So how could it survive the heat? Says Gemara, Ulitaimech Teva Heichisagya. How did the Teva go and not be melted by the heat? I mean, it was made out of gopherous, and it had pitch. How did it not get melted? How did Oig Melech HaBashan survive? Ela Nes Nasalem, it was a miracle, Shenitstanu B'tzidei HaTeva, that Hashem made it cold around the Teva, and that's how the Re'em survived, and that's how Og survived. Which means that Noach also had to have the apparatus to be able to feed it, as he had the apparatus to feed Og, which was very difficult because we say it's hermetically sealed, inside and out. But obviously he fed Og, and obviously he fed the Re'em, amongst all his other things that he did. Says the Gemara, Ula Rab Shimon ben Lakish, Nehei Nami di Yored Mabel Eretz Yisrael. But the Mason didn't remain there. After a bubble was called Shinner, because Kol Mesi Amabel Ninaru L'Sham. They rolled down there. Says Mavahaloi Potch, they didn't remain in Eretz Yisrael. Damrei Shlakish Lama Nikra Shma Metzula. Why is bubble called the deep? Shekol Meisei Mabel Nitztal Lusham. The dead in the Mabel sunk there. Rabbi Yochanan Lama Nikra Shma Shinner. Why is it called Shinner? Shekol Meisei Mabel Minarusham. We're shaken down there. Says Gemara, Reish Lakish says, yeah, but since there were so many dead, some of them had to be caught in cracks and crevices under the ground, that some of them got stuck there. Why is it called shinner? Because it shakes away the wealthy people. The wealthy people get shaken down. They don't remain wealthy because they didn't give tzedakah. There was miserliness in Bavel. Says the Gemara, but we see there are rich people in Bavel. You see, it says v'tzitkasam livnei vonim. Usually, the ability to give charity remains in 3 generations. In Bavel, it didn't remain for 3 generations. So tasa darei loy mashke. Amar Rab Ami kala oichel me'afra shel Bavel. Whoever eats the earth of Bavel, ki'ilu oichel besar avosav. It's as if he ate the flesh of his ancestors, because the dead of Nebuchadnezzar are there. Taninami achi kala oichel me'afra shel Bavel, ki'ilu oichel besar avosav. V'yesh aimim ki'ilu oichel shkatzim uramasim. There was vermin and creeping things from the marble.
Eating mamish from the soil or whatever goes on the soil?
No, we mean soil, eating the earth, because the mason decompose, and the food we could eat. Once it transfers into food, then it loses its status. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to eat any food. Now, Sora mishtaleach, the sor that's sent away. So we learn it out that our Mishnah says that we learn out that you're not chayiv for the sor mishtaleach if you shecht it outside, because it says el pesach el mayit, and the sor mishtaleach is not brought el pesach el mayit. Says Gemara V'Ramini, we're going to see that we learn it out from La Hashem. Oy carbon. Or if you shech the carbon, you're chayiv for shchutei chutz. Sheme'ani afilu kotche berekabayis. I might think you're chayiv for shchutei chutz, even for that which is dedicated to temple maintenance. Shenikru carbon, that's also called the carbon. Shenemar nakrev is carbon Hashem. Talmalaymer vel pesach ha'ilmayid layavi. You didn't bring it to the pesach ha'ilmayid. Only that which is brought into the Beis Hamikdash. Only misharoi lava ba'ilmayid to be brought as a carbon. I would think that we should exclude Berekabayis she'ena ru'im. But we shouldn't exclude the sar mishtaleach. Right? It's brought into the Pesach al Mayid. We have to do the hagrala. We have to pick the lottery. Which one is La Hashem and which one is La Azazel? So it's brought into the al Mayid. Talmud Leimer La Hashem. La'itzi sar mishtaleach she'ena miyuchad La Hashem. So why you say quoting the pasuk of Pesach al Mayid? We learn it out from La Hashem. Says like kasha kan koydem agrala. Before the agrala, you're right. We learn it out from Hashem. Kan la achar agrala. After the agrala, where then there's no reason to bring it inside. Then we can learn it out from a Pesach al Mayid. Says Gemara. Well, even after the agrala, we need it inside for the kohen gadol to do vidui. Achar agrala nami ho'ika vidui. So the Gemara says, you're right. Elam Ramani like kasha kan koydem vidui. Before vidui, we learn it out from La Hashem. After vidui, we learn it out that you're not chayiv from El Pesach or El Mayed, because it doesn't need to be brought anymore into the Pesach or El Mayed. Well, Hagrala has to be taking place in the Azara. So it has to be brought El Pesach El Mayed. And therefore, since it has to be brought up Pesach al Mayid, I might think that if you shecht it outside, you're chayiv. Reb Katz, we hope you'll join us many nights. We rolled out the royal carpet.
Weather permitting.
Huh?
Weather permitting.
Weather permitting. Okay, no. Everybody is exempted if it's 2 feet snow. No question. But if you can't come, you could also join us on Zoom. The Zoom, do you have a computer?
No.
Okay, good. That's all I wanted. A neder, barabim. That's all I wanted.
No obligation.
Thank you very much for coming, everyone, and have a good evening.
Just go ahead.